Welcome to DDCEO today. We've got a great young entrepreneur on board here that's done some really cool things in his career, huh, Chris? We're excited to hear from David Blake. David Blake, the founder of Degreed, a great idea and a great business today that, boy, we can all use a little of this Degreed because so often, in my opinion, we don't train as well as we should or could in many of our businesses. And when we do, we see much more longevity in our team and everything else. So David Blake, welcome to Dish Digger CEO today. We're excited to have you.
Nice to be on here.
Where are we talking to you from today, David?
Salt Lake City, Utah.
It's a great place to be. I'll be out there next week. We're gonna go to Deer Valley for a week.
Nice. We just got 10, 15 inches depending on which resort, but so hopefully that and a little bit more before you get here.
All right. I can't wait. Okay, so David, let's we'd like to hear from the horse's mouth, really kind of, where you as an entrepreneur became confident enough to think you could do your own thing and then kind of your own thing, right? How it started.
Yeah.
If you want to start from kind of the beginning, as you're a young guy, but start as a really young guy and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm getting old enough. I don't know that too many people call me young much anymore, but I started Degreed in my 20s, so I was much younger then. I'm not a natural born entrepreneur, so sometimes you hear the stories of kind of lemonade stands and whatnot. I mean, just that wasn't me. And in many ways, I was kind of the exact opposite of the natural born entrepreneur, which is I was a great student. And being a great student, in many ways, what it takes to be a great student is coloring in the lines, following the rules, tasks given, they say jump, I say how high, and so in many ways, being a good student is very antithetical to being a good entrepreneur. But that is kind of the genesis of my story, which was I was making it my way through high school, had this goal and ambition of being sort of the quintessential college applicant, getting into the great Ivy League school. And, and that was the path. That was what I had applied myself towards. But it's when I sat for the ACT that I was just blown away. Just that Saturday morning, 3.5 hours, I just couldn't believe that this is the best way to sort all the 17-year-olds in and out of their future. And I was so perturbed. It's like, no way did all the grownups get together and decide that this is how they're going to do it. Like really, this is actually really how we're going to sort all of the 17-year-olds in and out of their future. And I was just so perturbed. And I mean, as a great student, I scored really well. So it wasn't even about that. But anyways, long story short, that was kind of the start of this thread. And I appreciated that here I was, a great student. But as I started pulling at this thread, I started to read about the education system and how it came to be. And once I saw it as a system, I realized I'm a product of a system. And I didn't actually like what the system had turned me into, which was mostly a good test taker and a good memorizer. And I realized that what it hadn't turned me into was actually a good learner. I was actually a really terrible learner. And so once I had this that dissonance of holy cow, I am an excellent student, but I'm a terrible learner. That just felt all sorts of wrong. And so I committed to myself that I was going to be a great lifelong learner, even if it meant giving up being a good student. And kind of my whole life trajectory changed based on kind of that insight and that goal that I took for myself.
So you're saying, David, because you realize you're kind of a system of you're a product of the system. If you follow all the rules and you kind of learn what they want you to learn and the way they want you to learn it, right? Compared to maybe really discovering more by going beyond what the system was bringing to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I read 2 books that were really influential, kind of right in this moment of self-awareness and discovery. So one was called Successful Intelligence, and the other was The Millionaire Next Door. And Successful Intelligence was not a very popular book. It never really had much societal impact, but in many ways, it was just sort of a precursor to this idea of EQ, which did make it in the zeitgeist. And the book was all about how the most successful people aren't necessarily just those with the highest IQs or those who have the most success and sort of the academic framework. And so, I mean, that was sort of gave me permission to rethink what it was going to mean to be successful and what kind of goals I wanted for myself. And, and then Millionaire Next Door sort of similarly was just a book. And that one still, I think sells well. I mean, 30 years on, 40 years on, I don't know how old that book is at this point. But, it's really about questioning, most people become millionaires not by most people become millionaires by saving more than they do by earning, is essentially the premise to it. And that kind of be careful with the consumption and sort of luxury trappings you allow into your life, because they work against, in many ways, this goal of actual financial independence.
Absolutely. Yeah. I actually remember reading that book years ago, probably 30 years ago, maybe even longer. But yeah, it was all about, the guy, these two, the guys driving the marginal car and living in a nice house, but nothing crazy fancy. And compared to maybe the guy next door with him that drove the expensive car, had the expensive house, expensive car, but had nothing in it. If a rainy day came, they were screwed, right? Compared to the millionaire next door that lived a good life, but a modest life, and was prepared for anything in the future, basically, because they didn't live outside their means.
Yeah.
That's yeah. I mean, it definitely made an impact on me. I think in that book, I don't know if that's the book I read back in the day, but I from a book I read back up in that time, I realized that I was never gonna have vehicle debt. I was always going to pay cash for a vehicle if I was going to buy a vehicle, anything personal, vehicle, real estate, anything I'd buy. I was going to wait and not buy it until I could pay cash for it. And otherwise, in business, I was pretty aggressive. In business, I create, I used debt and everything that I needed to grow, to buy equipment and technology, all that stuff. But yet, personally, I want to pay cash for everything, and I've done that ever since. But again, was it that book that kind of talked about that?
It does quite a bit. I mean, the story that stuck sort of in my brain is this sort of business owner, family kind of led business. The employees sort of been there a long time. Everyone's sort of this sort of corporate family type culture. And it was like at his 60th birthday or something, the company bought him a car because he would never buy sort of a nice car for himself. And he graciously accepted it at the party where they awarded it. And then he went and he sold it the next day. Because, and it's kind of I think it's like a Taoist principle, and it shows up in Fight Club, but you don't own your stuff owns you. That idea that, even by allowing these things into your life, you have to care for them. So you have to tend to them. They require maintenance and attention and energy and at times money. And so you let these things into your life, and, you own it and it owns you, and be careful what you let, own you.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's such a great point. And so, so in your life, tell me how, when you started in this business, you started at a young age, right? I mean, was this an idea you had that came to fruition exactly the way you envisioned it? Or tell us about, how that happened, and, did you pivot here and there, or did you have a vision that just came to fruition and continued on through, and now it is today exactly what you envisioned?
Yeah, I mean, if anyone else has a straight line to their story, I'd love to hear it, but mine certainly doesn't. Yeah, I mean, just to connect the dots from sort of this my schooling to the start of my entrepreneurial journey. So for me, it was very much kind of this like very deliberate and intentional realization that I was going to have to kind of unlearn and relearn a whole new way. And like I said, it wasn't really not a natural born entrepreneur. So I joined a startup and worked there for 3.5 years. And I very much felt like that was what I needed. I needed to see how it's done. I needed to see what it looks like. I needed to appreciate what skills were going to be important in the journey. And so, that was, I think that was very important for me. And so I joined this startup called Zinch. It was in the higher education space. It was a LinkedIn-like platform, but for high school students to create a profile. This is in the early days of social media and the consumer web. And so this idea of having a student profile that you could use in your college admissions was new. And we were going to universities, selling into universities, saying, instead of just sending the glossy brochures in the mail, you can now connect with students online and based on a much broader array of who they are and what their interests are. So a good product helping students. The motto of that company was students are more than a test score. It was all about trying to give holistic representation to students in the college admissions process. It served to give me that education. It served to give me sort of a baseline of skills for the entrepreneurial journey. That business successfully got acquired by a then private company, which would later go public. And then I did a brief consulting engagement for a Silicon Valley startup that was in the higher education space. As I got married young, had my kids young. So I'm a young dad in my 20s wanting to start a business and just trying to save our pennies to create the personal kind of runway to give us a shot at doing this. And having worked for a startup, it hadn't paid especially well. Startups rarely do, is in the early days. So, just saving the nickels and dimes and to create some personal runway was really tough. So I was doing this kind of consulting engagement because I just wasn't quite ready and wanted to get as far as I could before I was entirely, burned the boats and had no kind of salary or income. And my wife wasn't working at the time. So when I went all in on Degreed, that was it. The clock started. There was no other income, and it really was kind of an all-in endeavor. We had managed to save $13,000 when I started Degreed. We were living in San Francisco, which is an expensive city. So, we really only had a couple of months worth of, personal budget and runway, and I had to get after it. But I'll give you a little pause there and happy to tell you more about the
Yeah. So,
journey.
how many, was it a couple of years you're doing the consulting stuff after Cinch?
It was about 6 months. It was pretty brief, actually.
6 months, and you said, okay, now it's time. I mean, you had this. Was it a vision you had much earlier? Is it similar to the vision you had when you're taking the ACT test that developed over time through building Zinch with the startup and all that, where it started getting clearer and clearer to you, or how'd that look?
Yeah, I mean, I think perhaps somewhat unique. The mission, the mission and vision of Degreed has been in my head a long time, and we planted that flag on day one of Degreed, and it has never changed. Sort of the business model and the strategy and approach we've taken to how are we going to get there has some zigs and zags to it. But the mission of Degreed, we say, is to jailbreak the college degree. What we mean by that is we should exist in a world where people get credit for all of their learning. Yes, their academics, but also any professional training, professional development, as well as all of your informal lifelong learning. So all the articles, videos, books, podcasts, experiential, just any way you develop knowledge or skill, you should get credit for it. And so that's the mission. And then kind of early on, we started with consumers. So it felt like, okay, if we're going to give people a lifelong profile to aggregate all of their learning, it needs to be owned by the individual. Thusly, we'll start with consumers, create this consumer profile. But even from the beginning, believed we would monetize and with some sort of corporate offering. And so the big pivot for Degreed, or sort of really sort of just like fork in the road, was as we started working on an enterprise business model, there was kind of this, we could go left, which was take this platform and profile we've built and use it for recruiting. Or the other path was, do we use this, sell inside the organization for corporate learning and development of the people they've already hired? And we explored recruiting first. It was actually, I couldn't meet someone early on in the early days of Degreed, hear what we were doing, and have them not believe that we were going to be a recruiting platform. It just seemed the intuitive, of course, obvious assumption to everyone. But as we pushed in that direction, it was just kind of friction. So, I mean, LinkedIn already had scale and network effects, and trying to like edge into a LinkedIn world was hard. And there were specialty platforms, but they tended to be niche. And what you know and what skills you have is of real consequence in recruiting, but it's not the entirety of the equation. So in many ways, we had sort of a better offer for part of the equation. So anyways, it's just friction. And then when we finally sort of pulled our head up and went and explored selling into corporate L&D for this to be a platform for them to use with their employee base, then it just kind of hot knife through butter. And it just kind of took. So
Corporate L&D, learning and development.
Correct. Yes. Corporate learning and development.
And did you go after like the whales right away, or did you go after small businesses first? Or tell us about that, how you figured out, where you're going to go after. You got a few $1,000 of runway, right? Who are you going to go after to create some real income fast?
Yeah. So we can go back and talk about the VC journey and financing, but we ended up raising money for the business, and so it was 3 years before we made it to revenue. And so we had existed a long time and had just kind of hung on by the skin of our teeth in many ways. But to answer your question, so our first client was Lithia Motors, which is a network of used car dealerships. And they were going to use this with their corporate employees. And it was like a $10,000 contract. And our second contract was a small engagement with Salesforce. So it was like a $20,000 contract. And then our third contract was a multi-million-dollar contract to go enterprise-wide globally with one of the world's largest banks. And so our first client was used car dealership, and our third client was a Fortune 10 global contract.
Wow. Unreal. How'd you get in front of that? It's such a small business that they would have confidence in you and all that. Was there, it's a great relationship you had with somebody or somewhere, or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's a testament of a couple of things, and sometimes, you have to kind of earn your luck. But I had a relationship with kind of a mid-level manager inside of the bank who had taken an interest in what we were doing and had followed along. And when we started working on the corporate offering, I asked him to pilot it with his small team, and he used it for like a week and just said, "This is great. I'll, try and help you figure out who inside the bank, could really look at this for the bank." And that kicked off an email chain that they showed us later, because I mean, it's sort of this miracle. That email chain went through like 25 people. So it was just like he emailed someone and they didn't know, so they emailed someone and they didn't know. So it was just like bouncing around inside of a giant global organization. And the fact that it did eventually make it out the other side on the desk of the right person is something of a miracle. But it did eventually land on the desk of someone in the corporate learning group who themselves had kind of already come to the conclusion that, the internet had matured. We were sort of post social media. This is circa 2000, and they call 2011 the year of the MOOC. That's when Coursera, Udacity, and edX launched, all of which were pretty influential in bringing kind of learning into the consumer web. That's when Khan Academy kind of made it into the zeitgeist. That's when lynda.com, which would become LinkedIn Learning, and Pluralsight, and Khan Academy, Coursera, Code Academy. I mean, it was this big year in learning. And so this is after that, and they had appreciated that. Look, now people are going to be learning on their own. They're going to be learning across a myriad of platforms and providers. And if we want to know what people actually know and what skills people have, we're going to need to have some way of giving recognition for this. So they had sort of independently come to a very similar conclusion. And when we knocked, this email made it on their desk, and it was just, again, it was a match kind of made in heaven and came together.
So tell us about how you structured the learning there. I mean, your new business, right? They've got skills that their teams or thousands of teammates need to learn, and all different departments, I'm guessing, right? Was there was there an itch they needed to scratch right away? Was there something that was just bugging that the people were underdeveloped in a certain part of their business, or was it like across the board they needed this? And then how the heck did you guys rise to the occasion to be able to serve them, right? That
Yeah.
fast and that well.
So I think there's a couple of just quick analogies of, I think, the shift in the world. So, just think of trains versus Uber. If you want to build a train to transport people from here to there, it's a heavy infrastructure project, and you essentially get, that train, you might fork it once or twice, but it's expensive to lay track. So you essentially just have to commit. That's kind of what higher education looks like. We build big majors. We build institutions and majors, and you can fork it a few times, but like that's about it. And it's expensive and it's intensive and it's hard. And in an Uber world, you can pick up anyone, anywhere, and take them anywhere. And that's kind of the shift that was going on in this world of learning and training, which was historically, if a company wanted to train people, they had to build a program, or they had to hire someone to build a program. It's kind of like laying down train tracks. You just had to say, you're going to pick people up here. We're going to train them. We're going to drop them off here. And in a world where this kind of consumer internet had matured such that you can learn anything really from the world's best experts, the best institutions, the best universities, often for free, we had entered this world where with some, it took Uber building the technology and the platform, and it took Degreed, building a platform. But with the technology to enable us, you really can exist in a world where every single person can learn whatever they need, whenever they need it, in the most efficient way possible. And so that was this kind of big shift that the corporate world was encountering. We had historically built programs, they were historically instructor-led, they were historically in person, and all of a sudden, if we're willing to, we can just personalize everyone's development with all the resources that are out there. So that's kind of the big shift, and we just, it was the timing was right.
So let's just say it's let's use one of our companies. We have everything from construction workers to project managers, financial, finance teammates, accounting, sales, all this stuff, right? Let's say we've got a couple hundred people in one of our businesses, and we want them to be trained better, right? We want to somehow come up with the Rabine way, a degree, right? A degree that says this, you've learned how to do it the Rabine way, the way we want to serve our customers, the quality that we want to deliver, all that kind of stuff, right? Within the culture that we expect to live within, right? The core values that we expect. How do you guys go about that? How would your team break down, who we are, what we need, and all that? And how do we degree, teammates within this business with, let's just say 15 different, job descriptions that are multiplied by 10 each, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you a story that I think is maybe most apropos, because anyone can adopt it and it doesn't actually require a lot of technology. And I think it's a great approach. Typically, Degreed serves the world's largest companies. And so 13 years later, we serve about a third of the Fortune 100 and kind of a similar number of like the global 2000. And so when you're trying to think of, well, let me tell this other story first, and then I'll get back to this. So in Florida, there's a company called Marlin Steel, and they transformed their business through a pretty simple approach. They called it their skills matrix. So manufacturing, they were making wire baskets that held typically bagels for, Einstein bagels. So low intelligence steel manufacturing. And they had this massive transformation of their business. They call it, bagels to Boeing. And they started making mid and high intelligence components that were then used in aviation and defense. So, a massive up-leveling of the capabilities of this organization transformed the business. How did they do it? They took every employee, so they had, I think, 38, 39 employees. They put them in a spreadsheet. They came up with 140 micro skills that they wanted their employees to develop. And then they rated them 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. They put this in a spreadsheet, they printed it out, they put it on the manufacturing floor on a cork board, and every employee was eligible to up level in any of the 140 micro skills. And when they did, they would get a micro raise. And so it allowed the employees to go on this journey of sort of self-development and upskilling in a way that was targeted towards the business strategy. And it changed and transformed employees' lives. They went from making minimum wage to many of them making more than six figures, buying homes, paying off cars, sending kids to school, transformation of the employees, and transformation of the business. And they did it low tech spreadsheets. So that's a skills-based approach of this belief that the pie is infinite. If we develop our people, we're going to be able to attack more interesting and lucrative business problems, transform the business. They did it all on a spreadsheet. Now you can do that with 39 employees and 140 micro skills, levels 1 through 4, which is actually a 5-level system. That's something close to about 40,000 unique sort of data combinations. You can operate that way, low tech, if you only have kind of 40, 50, 60, 100 employees. If you have 300,000 employees and want to operate that way, you have to have technology. So that's where greed comes into play, is if you're going to take this approach at scale, you have to have technology. You cannot do that on pen and paper and Excel spreadsheets and try and do it globally. But anyone listening to this podcast can take the principle of how do we set ambitious business goals back into what are the skills required to be successful to pull off that strategy, and what is the development we're going to kind of frame with our employees and go on that journey.
I like that. Develop your team, and the pie is limitless, right? Invest in your team to be great at performing the skills that you need, and of course the pie is limitless, right? Because the better you develop, the more competitive you are, the more desired you are by your customers, and you have limitless ability to grow. I love it. That's a great way to look at it. Okay, and so when you talk about these huge organizations, you guys basically guide these organizations in building and finding the right training, or how do you do that?
Yeah, so what our platform does is it is able to keep track of who has what skills across the entirety of the organization. And then based on who has what skills and what their personal goals are and the objectives of the business, we can help identify for every individual, for every team, for every department, what the skill gaps are. And then we now sit across and are integrated with it's now 3,000 providers of online training. And then there's the ability to track any and all learning beyond those 3,000 providers. And so we really can match each individual with the best resources, whether that's, you have 5 minutes and you want to read an article, or, you want to sign up for a course, or anything in between: articles, videos, books, podcasts, certificates, boot camps, programs, courses. And so no matter what skills you have and the skills you need, there's then what are the best resources in the world to help you find and develop that. And that's what our platform does for people and organizations.
Awesome. So this business has started about really 2011, 12?
2012, January 2012 is when I started it.
2012, and you started with the first year revenues, or what?
0.
Oh yeah, that's right. You took like 3 years right before you did anything, right?
Second year revenue was 0, and third year revenue was near 0, practically 0. And then our fourth year revenues were about 8 million.
Awesome. 8 million. That's some big growth over that third and fourth year, man. Again, and then where are you guys today with 400 teammates on board?
North of 100 million.
Now, are there many people in this space? Are there many other competition? What does your competition look like, and how do you continue to one up them and kick their butts as technology keeps growing and growing, and there's more and more stuff, and AI is taking over so much of this stuff? How do you guys stay on top of this to be, the preferred partner in this world of new technology, right?
Yeah, so this the software that we built came to be called Learning Experience Platform. So it was a new category of software that's historically there was a LMS, learning management system, and that's where if you got to go do your sexual harassment training or any regulatory or compliance training, you're doing that in your LMS. So this was something new called an LXP. We created the category, we lead the category. We ended up acquiring we had a competitor launch and start chasing us about 2 years later. We acquired them a couple years after that. And so that further consolidated our leadership and lead in the space. And many years later, the third largest independent competitor in the space got acquired by kind of a sleepy legacy player, which in many ways kind of cleared the field. So, we really are the sort of unequivocated leader of this category. But yeah, AI showed up, for us, same as it did everyone else. It created, massive opportunity, and we've really embraced it. And so one of the products that we have in the market now is called Maestro, which is our platform for corporate learning to be able to build any coaches or simulations using AI. And so it allows them kind of a no code, non-technical way to use AI, build any of the solutions that they need. And then they can embed those in the learning journeys, learning pathways of their employees. And, it's already been a huge shift to the world, this ability to learn using AI. I think there will come another huge shift. Like right now, essentially, it's an oversimplification, but AI essentially knows everything, all public knowledge. It's oversimplification, but
Yeah.
what AI doesn't know is what you know. And so that leaves kind of the relationship right now between human and AI in a learning journey. It leaves it actually fairly inefficient. So right now we essentially prompt AI when we get stuck or have a problem or there's a catalyst to go learn something. But eventually we'll end up in a world where you'll be able to share with AI what you know. And I think that'll be another massive inflection point in how AI affects our learning journey as humans. Because at that point, instead of us prompting the AI will be able to essentially guide us at every step towards any goal. And that's when we'll get real, true sort of personalized AI teachers kind of like in our pocket.
Mhm. Yeah, no, it's incredible where it's going. We invest in AI pretty heavily. We have a tech company that we've are heavily invested in AI, and it's really changing our industry. So we're at the front end of this thing, and we spend more money than you would have to spend today, right? That's the scary thing is we spent a lot of money. Let's say probably $15 or $20 million in technology in the last 5 years in this company. It's a great business today that's growing fast. It's called Site Technology, but we're really changing the way the industry, the facilities industry, manages their properties, does project management and all that using, basically training AI with world-class engineering in every vertical of facilities maintenance, right? Whether it be pavements or roofs or facades or landscapes, we're finding the best of the best to train the AI, and then the product's becoming amazing. But again, if we did this today, if we started building this today, maybe it costs 4 or 5 million, not 15 or 20 million, to get to where we've gotten, right? So the scary thing is getting faster and faster and easier to train AI and so, right. So it's an interesting time, and I believe that you either embrace AI and I think your business could be benefit in a big way, or don't embrace it and be ready to fall by the wayside. In everything we talk about.
It's barriers coming down is at times scary for incumbents, but I mean, it's always good news for tomorrow's entrepreneur. So, the good news in all of that is in many ways, it's never been better. It's never been easier. You've never been more empowered in what you can do, how quickly as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm, for sure. Yeah, so when we have 15 different businesses within the Rabine Group, and the average company probably has oh gosh, maybe only 50 on average, 50 teammates, right? We've got some startups that have, 15 to 20 or so, let's say, and then we've got some old school businesses with a few hundred, right? Um, so either way, when I think about, your business, think about, listeners that we have listening to this and stuff. Who's the fit? Who are the customers that are the best fit for your business? Is it over 1,000 employees? What does it look like?
Yeah, for us, it tends to be larger organizations. Again, if there's only 10 of you, you can kind of keep track of who knows what just collegially, at the water cooler because you work literally alongside each other. And at some point that stops being true. So the scale breaks down the information and you need technology to enable it. So I mean, organizations typically 5,000 employees or above is kind of where degreed really kicks in. But if there's any organizations, smaller than that would just love some advice on sort of, how they meet their training needs, I'm happy to give anyone some advice of what the best solutions are, for the size of their company. So
Yeah, I'd love to get our leadership in front of you sometime. It'd be fun to listen to your perspective on it because it's definitely a challenge, right? The best businesses are going to stay in amazing shape when it comes to their education, their skills training, right? Their constant training to be great at what they do. You know, old school businesses, the problem they have is they keep doing things the way they always did. They don't usually retrain, and those are the companies we like to compete against, right? So yeah, I love it. Okay, so
love
when we
that
talk
line.
about when you talk about where you want to go with this business, what are your thoughts? Let's say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, where do you feel, David, that this business can take you and your leaders?
In it to build a generational company, believe that we're private today. I believe we'll go public. That's the best path to creating a generational company. I think against our ambition and mission, it's still early days. We're in this. AI really has kind of turned a corner in enabling organizations to be skill-based, to have that data, to have that information. It's a massive shift that I think is coming to the business world writ large. So it's an exciting time. I think there's still plenty of wood to chop, and I think this will be a problem that's brings opportunities, and kind of every technology will redefine how we approach it. And so a labor of love, our work's never really done, and I think I'm going to be at this for a long time.
When you look at when you think about your business and that to keep this team humming together and all that, what type of culture do you guys have you created? What's your vision for future culture? Is it and what are the core values that keep you guys together and moving forward in the same direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that has served our organization at Degreed really well is we were co-located and hybrid and highly flexible, kind of before it was necessarily in vogue or cool, and certainly long before COVID sort of necessitated that all of a sudden. And so when I started the business, I was in San Francisco. My co-founder was in Salt Lake City, where I now live. So we were in different places, and we started hiring in both locations. We would make some acquisitions that brought us an office in New York and one eventually in London and Amsterdam. So we had multiple offices. We had employees in different time zones. Early on, the importance of being able to hire the best talent and diverse teams led us to hiring remote employees. And so we had some people in one of the office locations. We had multiple office locations, and then we also had some remote employees. And to make that all go well, you've got to develop some muscles. And we got good at those muscles. And so when kind of COVID showed up, I actually think we were an organization that was well equipped to kind of quickly adjust. I think we, like many, as the world has returned to new normal, we had a sort of a return to office. What is the new approach going to be in this new normal? I think we hired almost exclusively remotely through kind of COVID, so that shifted the ratios. one of the things that's important to me is that people get to spend time together. That's best facilitated when not everyone is remote, because it's very expensive to regularly fly every employee somewhere. And so one of the goals that we have is to kind of re-strengthen our office locations so that there is some density of employees so that we can invest in putting people on airplanes and getting kind of all of our teams together more frequently.
Probably a little challenge doing that, right? When you went kind of remote, virtual, remote and stuff, and then you pull them back. Well, we've got this challenge ourselves, David, where a lot of our teammates are from all over the country, and it became second nature to allow that to happen, right? You got a great person in Denver, Colorado, but no office there. Hey, no problem. It's no big deal anymore, right? And that it kind of isn't until it becomes a cultural thing when you want to bring people back to the office, and then you're limited, right? So how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's a world of trade-offs, and we, like many others, are trying to just get back to that sort of peak optimal. I don't think there's any such thing as perfect. It's just sort of as you slide one way or the other, you're sort of trading off what benefit you get and trying to find that kind of sweet spot that's going to serve your organization and your team best. But so it's hard though.
Sure.
It really is.
No, I like that when you said, I mean, there's no perfect answer, and there won't be in the future. Say, make the best of it, and create advantages with those people that are remote, and then other types of advantage for those ones that are in the office, right? There's got to be a give and take, I'm sure. Okay, so when we look at what you do in business, tell us, what do you do on as far as giving back to the communities? I think any good business probably has a leader that understands how to serve others, and oftentimes you get caught up doing other things, serving the community, going after a cause you're passionate about, right? Tell us anything out there that you do or you've done in the past, if there's anything that you're passionate about, and so you made it your project to get after it.
So the theme of our lives is education. We started a micro school for our children. It was a private nonprofit school that we ran for 4 years to do sort of experiential and project-based learning, and a new model. My wife runs a nonprofit called Tech Moms, which helps women get into tech skills to get into tech careers here in Utah. I sit on the board of a school in Kenya that we're building. So definitely that's the theme in our lives. And then kind of the passion beyond that personally is in politics. And I actually stepped down as CEO of Degreed in 2018 and dedicated myself for 2 years to essentially democracy reform efforts and political organizing, and spent 2 years clipboard in hand kind of all across America. So another area I believe is important and demands the attention of all of us. And
yeah, so my LinkedIn, I talk more about really the state of our economy, the state of our the political environment we have that's in front of us federally or even local and regional, right? And so I get after what I think is really good stuff or really bad stuff. If I see stupid, I'm going to call it out. If I see really smart that I think is smart, I'm going to call it out. And so I do that constantly on LinkedIn. And I almost every day get somebody saying, LinkedIn is for business. Keep this crap off the internet. Keep this crap off of LinkedIn. And I'll say, you know what? You really can't be much of a business leader if you don't pay attention to the culture of politics. And so if you're not understanding what's going on regulatory wise and in politics in your community and in your state and in your country, you probably don't deserve to be a leader of anything. So because I didn't pay attention probably the first 20 years of my business life. I was so focused on business, I paid attention very little to politics. And then I got thrown into some stuff where unions were harassing me and the politicians were backing them, and the media was backing the politicians and the unions that were harassing my businesses at the time. And I said, I'm like, where does this come from? My teammates were happier than heck, right? They didn't want to belong to the unions they're trying to force us into. So it was that time in the early 2000s that I late 1990s, early 2000s, where I really woke up to understand that, you know what, if you don't pay attention to politics in your market and the bureaucracy and what they do to help unions, get larger and survive and in the market I was from, right? Boy, I deserved every bit of what I was getting, so eventually I totally studied the subjects. I got to understand it really well, and all the way up until 20 years later running for governor of Illinois. So I got engulfed in this world of politics a little more than most, but I was very passionate that we were losing our community, our state of Illinois, city of Chicago, and our country was also in a place that I didn't like, right? So again, I'll continue to talk about those things, because I think it means a lot to the future of our kids, for your kids and my kids and grandkids, right? To be able to be entrepreneurs, right? If we have a great free market system, that's all accessible. When you don't have that free market system, it's not that accessible, as we can see across the globe.
I've got an anecdote that might feel far afield, but I'll bring it back here and just quickly. But so I read an article just recently about how the birth rate is going down in America and in a lot of places, a second order effect that you don't really think a lot about, but is actually sort of compounded, is that the number of cousins people have is fallen by even more, because it's a multiplier.
Yeah.
So we used to have just bigger families and more cousins. It was like the average was like 25. And then today, the average number of cousins is like 10. It has fallen by a lot. And so it's talking about what are the implications of that. And one of the most, the kind of the big one that they were highlighting was one of the really healthy roles that cousins had for us in our lives were they are people we are related to, but they tend to be different than us. Mm-hmm. So you sort of have to like them and you're going to see them, but it brings into your life people that you care about who are being raised differently in a different place and potentially with the, sort of different points of view. And I mean, so to bring this back, I mean, I think we have a responsibility. Yes, absolutely. We should all be engaged, and it's okay to be engaged in your cause and, in your ways with your party. And like, that's okay. That's part of it. For better or worse, I mean, at the scale of 400 employees, we are politically diverse. And I think there's something healthy to that, to getting to work every day with someone who thinks differently than you, sees it differently than you, but who you still, care about and, you're going to see on Tuesday. And so I think it's an opportunity for us to practice and enrich our lives and the sort of political tapestry that is America, and that at some level we're losing how to, keep a healthy conversation going in this country. So.
100%. I agree with everything you said. That my board is got diverse minds coming from diverse pasts, and as well as our teammates. Right, we're very diverse, but we don't plan diversity. We don't hire by any diversity. Any DEI standards, anything else. We just are our diversity because we want people that think differently to be part of our team. We want people that challenge the way we do things. Right, and that creates, you automatically get diverse. You get a diverse organization culturally if you strive for people to challenge each other in a positive way, and hire from different marketplaces as well. So, but yeah, it's always it's a crazy subject when you think about where we've gone in our society, where diversity is color or sex. When boy, that's nothing compared to what you can get if you really hire people from all different environments, and not ever looking at that, not ever planning by sex or in my opinion, their ethnicity. So anyway, again, I think core values that we have are all about that, right? We want to respect those around us. If you don't, you're not going to be on our team very long. And we want to strive for excellence and continued growth, continued innovation. And if you don't like that, you're not going to be on board very long, right? And so,
agreed. And sort of my contribution to the world is really this belief that, we shouldn't be, our education shouldn't be defined whether we did or did not, and if we did, where we went to university. that you really should be, it should be a level playing field. You should get credit for all of your knowledge and skills, irrespective of how or where you got that, and believe that that creates a more equitable world that actually creates more diverse pathways to get into careers and be successful in our lives. And so that's the future that we're advocating for and championing for, and think that it gives everyone a better chance when we get recognition and credit for all of our skills, no matter how or where we got it.
Absolutely. We just yesterday started advertising for a chief revenues officer that'll be overseeing a few $100 million of business. And my HR person put in a bunch of things they wanted to see education wise. And I called her and said, really, just strike that sentence out. She goes, really? I said, absolutely. I don't care if they have any college education. I want to know that they educated themselves in a big way and they continue to. But I don't really care if they went to school. I'd love to hear it if they want to talk about it. It's not something we're ever going to demand from anybody as far as an education of any type. And that's not really common, right? When you're looking for somebody that's going to be kind of a equity partner probably and a big reason for your success in the future or value. But I feel like I want to know about their experience, their life experience, their business experience. What do they do in the last 10 years to show that they're qualified, right? And that's probably that college education, that MBA, that means a little bit for sure. It means that they're still educating, they're constantly educating, and they did in the early days and they still do today, right? But
that's data that shows that skills-based hiring is 3.5 times more predictive of on-the-job success than hiring based on work experience, which is crazy, and more than 5 times more predictive than hiring based on academic credentials. So, I mean, it really is the best known way to filter, vet, and hire people is actually to get at what skills do we need and how well do your skills map to that.
Absolutely. No, I love it. Christopher, you've been listening at David and this awesome roadmap that he's had with success.
Yeah.
Come on in and bottom with a couple questions and tell us what you learned here.
Sure. Yeah, really impressive. Just sticking with it, like 0, 2012, 0, 2013, and then bam, 8 million. That's I think we've done, over 100 interviews. That's the first time I remember ever hearing that. Just 0 to a lot in only 3 years.
Several years to becoming an overnight success.
Yeah, we have heard that. The decades long overnight success. So I'm curious about a couple of things. I have some pretty strong opinions on our current education system. I only graduated 15 years ago, and it seems that it's 10 times the cost now than when I went, and that seems absurd. I'm definitely leading you. I should have just asked this question, but how do you see the role of formal education versus informal learning experiences evolving?
Yeah, I joke, my kids are getting older. My oldest is 16 and she's a junior. So kind of next year is the year to be sorting out, she's going to be applying to university or doing something else. And I've just had to be careful that if my kids choose to go to college, they won't feel like they're disappointing dad. I'm really not anti-university, but the ROI has gotten to where it's no longer safe to assume it's a positive ROI. And the mandate that kids should go to college, I no longer believe holds is sort of morally. It probably takes about 50 years ago. I do actually think it was just the equation. The ROI was so high that if you could get in, you should go. And that if you got in, the costs were still so low. If you got in and could persist and graduate, that it just was universally ROI positive. And as such, it was okay to have this narrative of that is the path. And everyone should be aspiring towards it. Like it still was maybe open to critique, but we've inherited that narrative but the equation has changed so dramatically. And so, look, the demand for the skills gap is getting bigger every day, week, month, year. It's just the rate at which technology is scaling has outpaced the rate at which humanity can learn. So that means the skill gap is just getting bigger and bigger. So we actually are in dire need of higher education to be part of this solution set. I think we write off higher education at our peril. We need them. We desperately need them to be part of the solution set. But at the moment, we're still kind of doing things the way we've always done it and just for an ever higher price tag. So, the call to action is there. The invitation, we need them to step over the line. We need to get out of this all or nothing binary degree framework. It is morally corrosive. It leaves, it's the cohort of people who will not finish a degree, complete 100 million courses every year in America, but they don't get any credit for it. Like that is just an inefficiency and it's sort of morally corrupt. So we need them. They need to step over the line. We need to get out of the all or nothing binary degree framework. We need to get into a lifelong model. We need to get out of the model of matriculating students. Higher education needs to be always accessible to us, always on. It needs to be something where there's many on-ramps and many off-ramps that you can engage with it sort of as needed, when needed, and in the ways needed. We need them, but it needs to look really different than it does today.
Yeah, absolutely. That was well put. Thank you. So, with so much of this, AI, machine learning, just everything's automated right now. What areas, what skills do you think are most important to focus on right now? And I'm sure you never get this question.
This is maybe the most asked question that I get. It's a hard one because here's what I would say is the way I frame it is there's a big difference between the weather and climate. Climate changes slowly and is a function of sort of big macro things. The weather changes every hour, every day, and is a function of an entirely different set of things. And I've kind of, made my point in my adult life to be an expert on climate, on the big questions in skills and in credentials and in how we train and how we do higher education. But depending on what week you ask me, the weather is changing all the time. So it's actually, I don't get to spend my hours as a weatherman reading all of the, this week's reports. Some trends I believe in, which is for a long time, the narrative was it was the soft skills that are going to be safe. It's the soft skills that are going to differentiate us from whether AI or the robots, and that is going to be the most human sort of. But I don't think that that's true. AI is already demonstrating that it's got better sort of bedside manner than most doctors. And, I had someone lose someone. So they had a family member die. And, that's a tough moment to be trying to be as connecting as possible, as kind as possible, as empathetic as possible. And as I was texting them, I sent every text to ChatGPT before I would send it to them and say, give me feedback on this text. Just like
I do that too.
it's getting good at the highly sensitive emotional thing. So I just don't think that we should have this narrative that your soft skills are what are going to keep you safe in an AI world. I think a combination of like subject matter domain and broad-based skills, and you should augment your own skill set with AI, get good at AI. That's probably at the moment the best broad-based advice you could give anyone, which is no matter what you're doing, to what degree have you allowed and enabled and invited AI to augment, that with you? And you'll probably be better if you increase that by 20 points.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I pretty much put every text message, email, just a once over through ChatGPT, or I'm using Gemini now. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's so good. It's like it's like, that's what I was trying to say, but you said it way better.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. My final question for you. I think you have one of the most unique ICPs that I've heard in my life. You only work with clients with 5,000 and up employees. First of all, how many companies are there that have that many? And secondly, how do you get in front of their decision makers? That seems like that'd take at least 3 years to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think our go-to-market motion probably looks a lot different than even a lot of other Silicon Valley SaaS companies. A lot are sort of land and expand. A lot are sort of start at the bottom of the food chain and work their way up. And we really sort of in many ways fell into the very top of the pyramid, and we've pushed down at moments in time, but it's continued to the use case is strongest with kind of these global scaled organizations, complex organizations. How do we get in front of them? You know, account-based marketing is a term, I mean, for us, it's just keeping track of a few thousand organizations and who the right people are and trying to develop those relationships. And, it's high touch, versus just sort of ads, digital, online funnel, sort of quick phone calls to qualify, quick phone calls to close. Our sales cycles tend to be 12 plus months long. And, these relationships last, we're a 13-year-old company. And so, I mean, our longest relationship now has lasted a decade because we were 3 years before we closed corporate accounts. But, relationships that are going to last for decades plus and sales cycles that last for years plus.
Awesome. So some quick takeaways. And David, you are like sneaky brilliant and like well spoken. You're like so like laid back, but I mean, you just throw a curveball at you, man. You freaking crush it.
Very kind of you.
Yeah. Well, we're just real quick. Were you born this way? Do you read like every minute of every day? And how'd you get this like good on your feet?
Love learning. I'm a fluid learner now. I didn't used to be, and that is the truth, but I'm a much better learner now. I've seen what some of the world's best learners look like and do. I aspire to it kind of every day. And but it's very kind of you to be so generous with your praise.
And kind of you to spend your time with us and share your insights and knowledge.
Chris, any other takeaways you got? I mean, I liked a bunch of stuff that David said and talked about.
You
Yeah,
go for it.
No, I mean, it's just, it's a simple concept, right? His whole business is built on, right? Just, if you're developing your team on a constant basis and educating them the best you can, right? Training their skills and the pie's limitless, right? So many people feel like there's limits to the size they can get their business and get, but yet if you do a great job, skills training, again, I see this in my businesses. I've got a few of my businesses that are extremely strong at this with a great boot camp to train their teammates, exactly how to serve our customers best. And then I've got other companies that are, younger companies maybe or whatever, or companies that where we're just not doing as good a job with that, where it's a little more struggle to grow them, So, David, your business is built on a theory that's so simple, but yet, it's yet perfect, right? Because, so many businesses don't grow past a certain point because they can't, they can only train in front of people, right? By, basically showing somebody what to do and then doing it over and over again with them. And then, the train the next person will take them a few years to do the next person, right? But those that train well and can do it expeditiously can grow very fast. So it's really simple, but so true.
Absolutely. It's when I got into this business, people I think have gotten wise to this. I hear it less and less as time goes on, but what if we train our people and they leave, but what if you don't and they stay,
That's right.
Mark Zuckerberg on one of his recent interviews, I mean, and other greats have said it, and I do think it's true, is just we're going to be better at learning than any other organization, and that's our ultimate competitive advantage. In a world that's ever changing, it is the ultimate competitive advantage, is how good are you at developing your people?
Yep. I love it. David, you're awesome, man. But really, really, what a great story. And it's just the beginning of the story for you, dude. You're a kid still. You got 30, 40 years of runway still to solve problems and make a difference in this world. So, and I love the fact that you're taking what you do in business and taking it to the causes you love and educating kids and, communities and countries. I mean, the stuff you're talking about, as you continue, you're going to figure out ways to scale this in a huge way, for the causes you're most passionate about too. So it's going to be fun to see that.
Oh, it's a pleasure and nice to get time with both of you.
Well, thanks so much, man. Welcome to being a Dish Digger CEO, guest of ours, because we've got some great ones, and you added a lot of life to this list of 100. Now we got 117 or 18 now, Chris.
That's great.
Yeah.
And
You got some greats on there. I looked.
we got some greats on there, and now we got this great right here, David Blake. So, David, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And until next time, or you're in Florida or Chicago, look us up. If I'm in Salt Lake City, I might be. Are you in the city, Salt Lake?
Close. I'm in the first suburb north of Salt Lake. Yeah.
All right. I might be calling you and stopping by.
Please do. Grab a coffee.
All right, buddy. Good
All right.
meeting you. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
All the best, guys.
Till next time.
Till
See
next
ya.
time.